And of course, when you're so understaffed, you're always at risk that we will get to near midair collision number seven. We've had six, and number seven could be a true catastrophe if we haven't taken adequate measures to avoid it.
Congressman, thanks for your time. I know you're really busy right now. A couple topics I want to talk about, but my primary focus for me is the airport,
Sure.
which you had last week said you got a report that the control tower there was operating at like half capacity, right? Can you tell me about that, what you heard and what you know?
Well, that's right. And it's not just last week. I've seen since I began demanding action from the FAA in October of 2023 that while they recognize that we have as severe a situation as any place in the country, the number of air traffic controllers has gone down now below half of what they say is necessary. We have 29 fully trained controllers. They say we need 60 to assure a reasonable margin of safety. That is just not adequate. Our controllers here in Austin are doing a great job, but they're overworked and understaffed. And what happens is that some days when there is a controller who's sick or out on leave, and we have very heavy traffic, like during the summer travel season, or we have some bad weather like we've had in recent days, they have to have a ground stop because that's the only way, slowing the number of planes coming into Austin that they can keep us safe. And of course, when you're so understaffed, you're always at risk that we will get to near midair collision number seven. We've had six, and number seven could be a true catastrophe if we haven't taken adequate measures to avoid it.
And as not just Austin's representative, but someone that flies through there a lot, how does that make you feel when you see this situation unfolding?
Well, it concerns me greatly. I know that air travel is safer than driving around to Mopac or I-35 and other forms of transportation. But I must say, when it's a really heavy travel day and there's bad weather, I'm concerned because I know these tremendous air traffic controllers in the Austin Tower, who I've visited with a number of occasions, are really doing their best. But they're human like the rest of us, and there are limitations, and they need reinforcements.
And you touched on it. One thing I wanted to expand on too is, I mean, we're about to get into really some of the one of the busiest periods for the airport with summer vacations, July 4th holiday, and so those delays, I mean, that's really the threat of delays. That can be pretty problematic.
It really can. And to be clear, those are delays for flights coming into the Austin airport. So, what it means is that someone who's gone in this hot weather out to the airport to pick up a family member or a friend, someone who is waiting to come to Austin from Chicago or Dallas or Houston, they get told that they're going to have to wait another hour or another 2 hours. So, it's very inconvenient. It's unnecessary. And while I'm concerned about that inconvenience, I am even more concerned about the safety because I think every time we see one of those ground stops, it's really an indication of the failure of the FAA to be responsive to our needs in Austin.
And it's talk to me about what's happening then at the federal level, because right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's still a hiring freeze in place, right? So even if the FAA wanted to, they couldn't hire more people for the tower. Is that correct?
Well, the FAA has had a hiring freeze that may still be in effect for FAA employees that are not air traffic controllers. They no longer have a freeze for the controllers.
Good.
But the last time that I met with our controllers in the Austin Tower, they made such a big point of noting how interrelated the other services of the FAA are, the people that keep the safety equipment maintained, that they rely on for data about weather and other things around their backs that have happened at the FAA, the freezes that have occurred, originally actually dismissing a maintenance employee at the Austin airport under Doge, who was then rehired. All of these things impact us, even though it's the air traffic controllers that we feel most directly when they are so inadequate in staffing.
So is there anything that's being done at the federal level or anything that we should be aware of that you're trying to do to fix this problem?
Well, I'm going to continue to try to push in every way I can with the FAA and look for any legislative opportunities that are available. They are few and far between. We reauthorized the Federal Aviation Administration last year. We were told that would lead to some solutions here. It has not produced the results that we need. I was encouraged by some of Secretary Duffy in the new administration in his comments about the importance of air traffic control, especially after the incredible situation at Newark Airport. But I think so much of his focus is on the future and getting some great new 21st century air traffic control high-tech system. We need that, but that's years away. And what we need now are the people to fill the positions that are vacant there and give us a margin of safety that ends the ground stops and makes us all feel comfortable going in and out of Austin.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. If you
Thank
don't
you.
mind, I'd like to ask a couple.
Sure. Anything
Uh,
else you want?
so I want to talk about you were in Austin this past weekend. You spoke ahead of the No Kings protest that happened here at the Capitol. Talk to me about what you thought of that, the turnout, and what you think about just that nationwide movement across the country over that we saw over the weekend.
Well, it was a tremendous turnout, and I think it's important to note that with a tremendous turnout that exceeded 10,000, some say maybe even 20,000 people, the largest one of the many protests that we've had this year in Austin, that it was entirely peaceful. I think some people were a little afraid to come because of some of the things that occurred here in Austin with vandalism at the federal building and the murders in Minnesota. But despite all that, there were people with the courage to come out and make their voices heard. I got a really good response from the audience, and I got a good response when I noted that the DPS at the Capitol had kept us safe rather than being a problem there. And to note that when people go out and vandalize or engage in violence, they're the best allies that President Trump has. They are not serving the needs of the immigrant community or of any of us who feel so strongly about the dangers of authoritarianism. They are providing an excuse to use more violence in return to bring out the Marines, other steps that have been unnecessary in the past and should be in the future. What we need is to recognize the power of nonviolence, the power of more and more Austinites saying, I'm not waiting for a superhero. I'm going to put on my own cape and I'm going to do my part to try to push back and save our democracy.
What do you think about just the nationwide this No Kings movement that we saw over the weekend happened the same time that the parade was the military parade for the U.S. Army's birthday was anniversary was happening, and just this call to stop these ICE deportations.
Well, I think it is very impressive that at over 2,000 events in 50 states, that these were peaceful demonstrations. They were using the power of nonviolence. And I think that's a powerful statement of that this protest continues to build. In my speech here in Austin, I emphasized that we were proud of the accomplishments of the United States Army. We honor it, and that while we are there is to assure that the sacrifices that the men and women of the Army and the other service members do not go in vain, and that we do not lose the democracy that has served us so well for 250 years. And my feeling that that democracy is in peril, and that it is only when peaceful citizens of all political persuasions come out in force all over the country that we have hope of restraining what's going on. As far as ICE is concerned, I want them to remove any violent offenders that are causing harm, but to go after people that are paying their taxes, providing for their families, and providing valuable services and construction and healthcare and restaurants and service industries all over our community and across the country, that doesn't work. And I noted in my speech that President Trump on Thursday, for the first time, indicated he was concerned about what was happening to our great farmers, that they couldn't find the people to pick the crops, to provide the food that we need, and the same for some of the hotel and entertainment industries. Well, he's right. That's something all of us have been saying all along, that if you run out of the country, the people that are doing some of the toughest jobs we will all suffer. And so I hope that that's an indication that he's giving some second thoughts and considering changes in his immigration policy because these ICE raids are striking fear into the hearts of so many good people, and they're not directed at getting out just the quote bad ones.
Thank you. You also alluded to it. Saturday, we also had that tragic assassination and attempted
Yes.
assassination in Minnesota. Talk to me about your reaction to that, and even there was a scare in Austin following that about maybe safety concerns because of lawmakers there.
That is absolutely right. Of course, it was horrifying because political violence leads to more political violence. It leads to copycatters. It leads to people who think they're helping by responding to violence with violence. I was very concerned by these murders in Minnesota. I'm glad they finally apprehended that person. Concerned to hear from the Texas Department of Public Safety that there have been threats of violence by a copycatter who fortunately was arrested. That was the reason the Capitol grounds were initially closed down. We were concerned until almost the last minute whether they would be open, as they were for our successful protest. But overall, we do have to be concerned about these events. I participated in a vigil last week to honor the lives of the two Israeli embassy young people who were murdered in Washington. We know that Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania was attacked by arsonists to try to burn down the governor's mansion while they were asleep there. And these acts of political violence, domestic terrorism, which all of them are, we have to react firmly and support law enforcement against them. But we need to tone down the rhetoric, so much of which has come from President Trump. Violence is never the answer. We may disagree, as I do very strongly with him, but we need to find nonviolent ways to express our protest and avoid things that just drive people away from us.
Well said. Thank you. And then the last topic I wanted to ask about are these escalating tensions in the Middle East
Yes.
between Israel and Iran, who are, even as we're talking, still bombing each other. You know, talk to me about that and what needs to happen to get these two countries to de-escalate.
Well, I'm greatly concerned about the laws of lives. I'm greatly concerned about the loss of lives in Israel and in Iran. I am troubled that President Trump has been so weak that even though he had his own negotiations underway for a peaceful resolution of avoiding any nuclear weapons in Iran, that he could not restrain Netanyahu from starting this conflict. I think we have to find a peaceful resolution. Israel cannot bomb its way to security. And I believe the Trump administration needs to show the strength that President George W. Bush did when he said no to Netanyahu when he wanted to attack Tehran. An escalating war in the Middle East that draws the United States in will be a disaster for ourselves and for the Israelis and the Iranians. We have to find a peaceful way out of this. And it's unfortunate that the Netanyahu interruption of the Trump negotiations, I think, has set us backward.
Are you worried that if America or maybe globally the international community doesn't intervene here, it could escalate into something larger, some wider conflict?
Absolutely. The Iranians may be weaker than they once were, and that's good that they are. I'm no fan of this government. Opposed it for years, but they still have plenty of strength, and they can engage us in ways that are very harmful to the United States. They can draw in their allies, and we could be a part of a kind of disastrous engagement in the Middle East that we had in Iran, excuse me, that we had in I'll kind of just take it from the top again.
Please,
Yeah.
sure, sure.
Um, I am very concerned that while the Iranians fortunately have been weakened, that they still have great strength and they have allies. I don't want to see us drawn into a Middle East conflict that is as disastrous as when we went in to invade Iraq. President Trump promised he was going to put an end to these conflicts. His negotiation that he had underway may have been a step in that direction, but it was interrupted by Netanyahu, and Trump was apparently not strong enough to keep him from doing that. I hope we can return to the negotiating tables and find a way to assure no nuclear weapons in Iran, safety for the people of Israel, but safety for Americans who don't want to fight another land war in the Middle East.
Awesome. Thank you, Congressman. Is there anything on any of those topics I
Oh,
didn't ask or any final
oh,
thoughts?
I think we could go on for hours on the Middle East and on what's been happening here. I guess I would just add one more thought, and that is, this question of the conflict that's going on in the Middle East is one, it seems to me, where neither side can feel the justifiable pain of the others. When I saw the events of October 7th, I was horrified. I joined with our Jewish community and others in repudiating them and voting against the claim of from the river to the sea. But when I see each night reports of more innocent children being killed in Gaza, I am similarly horrified. And we need to find a way to a resolution of that conflict. And again, it requires President Trump showing more strength than he has and insisting that a ceasefire be implemented and that efforts be made not out of their homeland, but for peaceful and security Palestinian state and a peaceful and secure Israel.
Because and I'm sorry, as a follow-up to that,
Okay?
I know, like you said, we could
Yeah,
talk forever about this.
sure.
What about just even when it comes to how can we get humanitarian aid in there? Because even right now, it's hard to even get in
Well,
when we're talking about Gaza specifically. I mean,
absolutely.
starvation is coming.
With with the immense amount of assistance and support, including support to defend Israel from attacks from Iran or the Houthis or elsewhere, it is outrageous that President Trump cannot get humanitarian aid into Gaza. This war by starvation that Netanyahu and his extremists have urged is a outrage. We should not stand by and let children be starved, let people who are sick die because they can't get medicine and water. And the United States has failed to live up to its responsibility to humanitarian support for the people of Gaza. There's no limit on the right of Israel to defend itself, but it can defend itself without starving tens of thousands of people in Gaza.
Thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe button and get the latest news by downloading the CBS Austin News app.